welcome everyone to FME and Transportation. We're a special interest group that we meet. Right now, I think it's been about like once every 2 months. Um, we have met in person at the GIST conference the last few years. We're gonna continue to do that if allowed, which next year would be great in Chicago. Um, Today, I know Bo, you're going to be presenting on working with the Roads and Highways LRS network model. So we can always start out with introducing you, Bo. You are a veteran practitioner and researcher in the GIST space, and the creator of the Linear Bench and Give SaaS products. Your knowledge is, or your new passion is to build a collaborative GIS platform for governments, and you are continuing your minimalist and nomadic lifestyle. So we always say for our presenters, their favorite FME transformer. You say yours is the attribute validator. I don't know if you want to expand on that. I know it's always intriguing to hear everyone who uses FME, where they tend to lean to. So why is attribute validator your favorite transformer?
Yeah, I think the attribute validator is flexible to identify. It allows you to specify many rules to identify data issues. And data is so important, but also at the same time, data quality is critical. And you get garbage in, garbage out. And in fact, oftentimes, not only the result to be incorrect, it will bomb your system because you tend to make assumptions of certain data types and certain availability of something. The logic will even be bad. So not only just the will be misleading in terms of the outcome, but the simple logic might even break. So I always I put this over here simply to illustrate the importance of and the capacity of FME making to validate your data even before, at the very beginning of that. Just get rid of some of the things. For example, you want to get rid of or identify or just to take off some of the routes does not even have the measure. So if you have a route feature and there are actually routes without measure, it's going to cause issues down the stretch, right? So simple as that. And certainly if a certain column is not nullable, you have a null kind of value over there, it might actually crash your system of logic. So for that matter, I highly recommend that we get into the habit of just using attribute validator to affirm your data kind of assumption to start with, or avoid some unassumed data, possibly just being the bad data or data that needs questionable data, direct that into, let's say, spreadsheet file, then send over to whoever is responsible to look into that and tell you how to. So I'm sorry for this long, because I haven't really thought about this, but I'm kind of talk as I, as I think. So sorry.
No, all good, Bo. We love to hear your insight. And it kind of reminds me of, when you're learning a new language and coding, it's all about coding defensively. So this attribute validator definitely follows that mantra. Uh, so I believe all of us, with our experiences probably can relate to that for sure.
Totally.
Uh, so then the other thing, your least favorite food is NTIKO, which from the last time I learned, that just means not that I know of. So you are not a picky eater.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I in fact here I mean Hainan Island just in a very I would say pretty vibrant, neighborhood. And just down this high-rise condo, we have the market, the kind of like we call the farmers market, except farmer markets is daily. It's not like weekly, daily, the whole day. In fact, people are there, vendors are over there. There's a variety of fruits, very exotic fruits, and even including passion fruits, in which I just realized that that particular, kind of fruit is actually originated from the Americas, South America, and so I've been eating different fruit each and every day for the last couple weeks since I've been here. So yeah, I venture into different food. Let alone the Chinese food itself is so rich and in different styles and the different locale specials. So it's good.
That's great. So if we want to go on, unless there's anything else to say, we can start with your presentation on FME with the LRS network model in roads and highways.
Okay.
There's a little description here I can read that you typed in while you get that up if you'd like.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sure.
there
Go
you
ahead.
have the uh you say we are familiar with processing LRS events managed in Esri roads and highways in FME, but what about scenarios where deeper access to the LRS network model itself is required? Whether it's converting a West Virginia DOT buildings state mile point to a county mile point, creating a spatial temporal intersection table with advanced logic, replacing centerline geometries with updated GPS runs in Minnesota DOT. There are times when going beyond the standard event layer is essential. So in this webinar, Bo will share practical examples and lessons learned from using FME to tackle these complex LRS flows. So with that said, Bo, go right into it.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it always. Yeah. All right. We have a small group, and this is pretty niche. I mean, FME is kind of like a niche, roads and highways niche, but talking about network model is actually pretty special. It's pretty narrow, I know. Yeah. So let's make it conversational. And I'm here. It's what time is it actually right now? Yeah, it's 1:09 almost. Yeah, in the morning. So I actually took a nap, so I think I can still mentally is okay today at this moment. So for questions and just stop me and have a conversation. Okay. So we all see this particular depiction of network model. Essentially, you have centralized sequence. We have center lines. I consider center lines being I consider center line being a pool of lines that has no association with anything, just a pool of lines sitting over this geometry, sitting over there. And uh, by the way, we keep having people coming. And Matt, I was wondering if we are able to accept them, admit them.
Yeah, I don't believe it's giving me the permissions. I hear the
Oh,
invite.
okay.
So
Hold
yeah,
on, hold on. Let me take care of that first. Let me
okay.
give you, yeah, I forgot to give you the co-host. Co-host, who's that? Oh, okay, Matt, right over here. So co-host, make the co-host. All right.
There we go. Okay, I'll take care of
Thank you.
that from
Yeah,
now on.
sure, sure. That's great. That's great. So, all right. And I consider center lines being just bag of object, line object over there. So what's giving its life is actually the sequence. Because we all know route is a sequenced sequence bunch of center lines, right? In a specific sequence, then you add a measure to it. Where do the measure come from? Measure come from, I think typically the line itself has length. You might have other metrics, but typically in transportation, it's just the length of that. And they use calibration points to control the specific location where you want that calibration points to be. But in roads and highway, in fact, it's just the whatever the points, typically intersection points, you assign measures right over there. Yeah. And then you generate network, and network can be multiple networks. So in a way, in a way, I have this redepiction of that, adding a little more about multiple networks, because that's some agencies, some states using it. So we have the back of pool of center lines over here. They just center line. They might be connected to others. It doesn't really, it's just geometry over there. Then for each network, you have the calibration points and line sequencing. Then they combine to work together to build this LLC network, which we traditionally call this as the route feature class, LLC route feature class, which means a long line represent the sequence of center lines, with measurements built into it. So in a way, this network or this route feature class, it borrows geometry from center line, right? So it's a redundancy. It's a redundant situation in terms of geometry. So geometry, if geometry changed, we need to deal with, it should be reflected over here. It impacts not only the geometry, also the measures, depending on where that is typically, right? Measure will change. So that type of dependency is really adding to complexities to it. And some of you might remember the arc info time of the route system. In that time system, it is non-object based, it's all relational. In that case, route itself, there's no route feature class. Route essentially is just they have section tables to describe how the sequence of center line and also directionality of center line while we're building the routes in that. So in the classic route model, the route itself is a non-spatial column. It's a non-spatial table. So I think I'm gonna just for some of you who are not as familiar with this route model, I'm gonna dive into a little bit deeper here. And so I just before the meeting, I thought it would be nice just to look at the routes and look at the network itself. So this one is the calibration points. I hid the system, especially ArcGIS Pro. It has the system of some non-important maps. So we're only looking at the important maps. So we're talking about the point and measures, explicitly called out measure rather than the measure being part of the point. Okay, in this case, then you always have from day to day, which is controlled temporality. Okay, so this is easily understandable. Then here's the center line. So if you can tell the center line, there's no route ID here. It's just a bag of center lines. but it does have its unique ID, which is roadway ID GUI. Yeah, and it has the shape. And like in New York State, this is New York State data. It attempts to do a New York State ID, street ID. You know, ArcGIS environment is not going to, directly you don't even there's no tools for you to maintain your own columns. Some people even thinking about say, hey, next generation 911, there's a need to manage so many columns. The standalone files in next gen 911, for some of you who might be aware of it, it has like 50 or plus columns, flat, columns over there. We have the county left, county right, even having the country right or country right, left, if happens to be running around the border of a center line, right? And so there's a 50, around 50 of them column. And if you're going to maintain this over here, that might not be a good place to do because it's not focused on transportation. This is really focused on transportation. Seeing the center line just being a bag of center lines with unique ID, that's it. You can use in whatever combination of it to build your own routes. So the purpose is not to maintain attribution. So again, in this context, road center line is not to build it's an ancillary table or some behind the scene table support route building and maintenance, just for that. So then you have the sequence file. Now, if you look at the sequence file, I'm picking for this particular route has two routes. So it's saying, okay, these two are sequenced, okay, and still have the date. From date and to date, they're together in this particular sequence, first and second. And then the measurement is controlled by the point. Then we have the route feature class, and we're mostly familiar with it, especially if we're doing transportation, and we use this directly. We send this file, we share this file with others. We use it for dynamic segmentation, right? So it has shape. You can customize it with so many other of your own things. But for the other tables, seldom people customize it because Esri's internal, the mechanism does not allow you to edit them within their own tools. You can extend it, like New York attempted, but at the end of the day, nobody's using it. Okay, so I think it's enough intro of what is my understanding of that. I might not be 100% correct because I'm not Esri. So, but if anyone found that my understanding is off, just let me know. Yeah. Any questions so far? Okay. Well, I could use your help. Okay. How do you describe your maintenance experience? And you have anything else they like to contribute to say, how you describe your experience or your perceived experience? Myself, have never actually maintained any of the route system myself. Okay. Well, not in the roads and highway, era. And I did that way back when I just started using ArcInfo, in fact. So painful. So in the words, I think one of the things, the current maintenance system, building route, there's no real-time quality control is the biggest. And it's just so not 21st century. So not a typical IT kind of application. You want to build something that's wrong, it should tell you right away, say, hey, by making this change, you're violating the monotonicity rule. Doing this, you're creating a gap or overlap in measurements, right? And things of that nature. So you always become you handling route or even event error for that matter, because the event derive its measure, its geometry from route, and causing downstream issues. And later you have to use other tool to do it after the fact, what I call post-mortem kind of like quality control, yeah, rather than proactive real time. I think that's a big thing. And some of you might heard me, talking about using roads and highway editing to maintain routes. Being it takes village of saints to do it right, and it's a painful process. So now the questions. Okay, maintaining single county is daunting. Do we really have to make a state LRS network? Can we actually derive state-run network from county government? And can someone share with me if your agency maintains two networks? The networks in the sense of how, as we define it, because some people will say, okay, state network is actually coded a different LRM. Same network, multiple LRM, but in the lexicon of roads and highway, it is actually called a network. Okay, and anyone want to share raise your hand saying, hey, my agency actually actively maintaining two networks?
Hey,
So
Bo. Oh, go
Yeah.
ahead.
no. No, go right ahead. I'm Connecticut and not a roads and highways state. So yeah.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say that we do have multiple networks here, and one of them actually isn't counties, because we don't have county roads. But since we're not on the we're not in roads and highways, it's maintained a little bit differently. But there is overlap between locals and states as well. So getting that jurisdiction we had a little bit of trouble with. But that's it.
Mhm.
That's we're definitely a different perspective. So I'm intrigued to hear from other states.
Well, the way Justin describes your guys' network, you guys are, you guys got it all figured out up there in Connecticut. You have no problems.
Oh yeah, yeah. Hey, that's it. We just have to. That's what we do. We show you all the good stuff, and then we don't tell you about the back end. So.
Yeah.
How's it like for North Carolina?
Well, so I'd say technically we could say we maintain two. Because we do maintain the county, and I have created, because I really liked what Yu Ming wanted to do out of West Virginia, that Bo helped with, to get a statewide measure for mile markers. So I've created a workflow that will build that
Nice.
it's not 100%, but it's good enough.
Okay.
Because I'm using it for just that, to derive new mile markers, or maybe existing mile markers. And so the one-off things like gapped routes, I haven't really solved that problem, but at this point we haven't run into enough of those that it's worth the squeeze to spend the extra time for it. But was able to build something excuse me, out of that, so we can create measures, or find out the measures are statewide. So I'd say technically we have two, and it's just derived from our countywide measures. And I've created for our primary routes, but I also created a separate stream in my workbench for an individual route, because that's usually what we know. But if we wanted to see something, or if somebody had a reason to have something where they wanted to see the primary network, we could generate that pretty quickly for them.
Nice. Okay, cool. But I bet in your version of, state route, you're not messing with the center line and calibration points,
No,
right?
I am using strictly mile point and deriving all that information out of there.
Yeah.
We are, which is what we were talking about this morning. We are trying to create a publication product directly out of roads and highways, and we were having a discussion about all those items you were just describing this morning on how to derive the dominant route network, which is how we are basing everything for where we're going to populate the event data. And we have multiple products that we have out there, and so we're trying to mimic that by having it all in FME right now. So it was very on topic for us because we were talking about that this morning and trying to derive those things. And I was mentioning it to Abhijit, who's on here. Hey, there's FME-Ts today. If you got some questions, people like Bo, been in there trying to figure this out. we could ask you questions. So that's what we've been trying to do, is derive it from there. And so one of the things that was brought up this morning as we we're talking about it, when you're inside there strictly editing with roads and highways, which I think from a roads and highways product perspective, it's easy to edit. At least for us, the things that get in there are your business rules you might have around the hows and whys you're doing it. But the physical editing part, I don't think it's that bad. And you can actually automate a bunch of it. And again, depends on your business rules and things like that. But one of the things we ran into is when you co-route a route, and in this case, if you're using the inventory and opposite inventory in a bidirectional area, right? We are once we decide that the route has to be divided at any point, we then create the entire opposite inventory. And so there are portions that would be co-routed in there. And when you're building that, you're flipping the centerline segment itself. So if you were strictly using centerline to derive that, depending on when you're doing that and when you're taking that data, right? If you're just strictly following those vertices, you wouldn't get the right measures because they'd be all backwards from what the overall route is. So
directionality matters, yeah.
Yeah, so we were talking about using centerline sequence to derive where your splits in the network would be at, to then say, okay, in this area, these records, this is a dominant route. And you can use the mile point vertices to be like, here's the vertices and here's the direction it's going, so that you can match those together. So that's what some of the things we've been talking about this morning to validate some of that.
Well, okay. Sounds good. Sounds good. It's good stuff. And perhaps next time we'll get you guys to talk about your experience. That'll be fun.
Yeah, I hope to have I hope we have some output soon. I mean, technically we have some output, but we don't have just one.
Yeah, cool. Anything else? Anyone doing similar things and in the space in particular? Okay, yeah, I think the bottom line, because maintaining network is so expensive, and in reality, with the modern roads and highway implementation, few agencies actually, if any, would be truly physically maintaining two route systems. And in fact, West Virginia did until they realized that it just doesn't make any sense. It should be able to derive from others. And then we helped. Okay. And so, but But I'd like to comment, and the reason we have two different networks, and to start with, is prior to Esri days, Esri was in highway days. I remember because my first experience of linear referencing, even prior to ArcGIS, I was aware of. I did not participate at the time. I was from mainframe route system migrating over to ArcInfo at the time. So in the past, they have different models to maintain different things. They're all inherited with multiple systems inherited from a previous system. They were able to do that, but in modeling the two things more in a relational fashion rather than replicating the geometries, whole 9 yards. But anyhow, I kind of divert too much. So here's West Virginia. They want to combine them together and getting to use statewide mile point LRM. They use LRM, but it's actually network in the Esri term again. And because mostly they have business event system, some of which is depending on the state measure, but they maintain mostly using county measure to do everything. Yeah, so they do have this needs, and it's getting not very sustainable with the odd manual work that goes into it. So they essentially have they have the published one with the state mile point. Okay, over here they have the state, like non-interstate state, routes in that. They have the state interstate being different. Why interstate is different? Because interstate, when it crosses multiple counties, the measurements entering the county, leaving the county, they are connecting. Okay, it's unlike the U.S. and state, the other state routes, non-interstate state routes, and they reset from the beginning. It starts at 0 as it enters into a new section. Certainly, the route ID is different. In the state, they also have different route IDs when it cross different counties because it's county route map system. But the measurements, it's accumulating map in the direction of the route is going. Okay, so then all other routes, which is a little bit trivial because they only appear within individual county, and they still want to build them as a state kind of complete route system. So you can see it's pretty dense because it includes local streets as well. And of course, in that event, in that case, the state route will have different measure. Well, in this case, the route measure geometry will be the same, but the route name would be, route ID being different, right? Because it's representing state. So this is kind of a different direction. They're talking about some of steps, and so the interstate, as I mentioned, the measure at the county borders, they're continuous county measure, and route name change of the yes, and route concatenation, yes, because they are concatenating all of them together because they're supposed to be aggregating, sequencing together. Do we need to compute? That is misspelling here. And measure recompute. There's no measure recomputation because it's just put them together. They're all connected supposedly. Okay, so we need to do QC to ensure that they do. Otherwise, we're going to spit that out. This is kind of in the same vein of what I mentioned about attribute validator, right? Yeah, and you shouldn't assume the data coming is all good. Then routes here is restart at 0, and so these are some of the metrics, knowing that we have different scenarios, different things. They're not one size fits all. So step 1 is sequence the route. So for the off-state routes, well, there's no sequence at all. How about interstate? It's kind of simple, yes, because they are. You can tell by the measure. You can sequence them by the measure and making sure they are concatenating in this order, and the measurements will all go along, provided there's there's no measure defects representing that interstate. But interstate typically pretty thoroughly vetted because otherwise it will show up easily. So how about the non-state, non-interstate state route system? Sequencing that is not easy. So that's kind of one of the challenges. Think about this. You have one route, second route. I mean, when I say second route, being second in the row when we do selection, okay? And maybe third here, and fourth there, they all having the white point being 0. This is whatever the end point of that is. And they might have a gap. It goes through place and picks up in another county and going through this. Now, how in the world we can make sure they identify them, knowing, okay, this is the sequence, this would be the first one, this is the second one, third, and fourth. So this is one of the segmentation kind of sequencing they need to juggle. Just like any of traditional route building, you always need this. You need this way to sequence them through certain logic. Yeah. To subsequent measures and minimum differences, and this is how some of the logic are built into. And here's another trick, and I think another thing that I need to worry about, because one route could enter into and exit and comes back in the same county multiple times. It's how we can control the exit and entry point measure, so that this needs to be so that when they sequence them, and the measure at the border to be exact. So the sequence issue, measure control issue, which is not totally within the kind of directly available in the data set. We have to set other rules to enforce that. Then there's temporality. So think about, we have 3 counties. Let's say this is about to cover 3 counties. But at time t, okay, at time t, this route is being rerouted. Everything else stays the same. But what if you have like 20 counties going through, and within a time span, and one county and can change, and maybe in a few weeks, another county has a minor change. So you're having many different versions of that, and all for different time span. So this also need to be considered. So this one, you build this sequenced route, is used to be, generally speaking, from here, majority of them are from T1 to T2, but if one actually made a change, you have to split them up. So that temporality change is also very real. So you need to, given your sets of data, even on a route, you need to identify the starting time, the from dates. And we have multiple from dates, and not from the same date, of course. And then you need to make kind of different time spans, as many as time span, even for one route, you need to build them. So that's another complication. And you need to build single line table, because if you're maintaining the system, you do build calibration points. Again, remember, calibration points, center line, these are dependent. These are per network. If you're building state route network, you have to use, unlike the center line, this is essentially background lines for you to however use it as raw material. You can use it multiple times, even for one segment, right? And here you need to build that. And if we need to build that, as we've seen that, there's a temporal change from date to measure. So you can see it's getting quite complicated, very complicated. Yeah. Now, once you have done that, you have 2 ways to build your feature class. One using ArcGIS GP tools to generate the state route. The other way is merge sequence, without measure and measure, essentially using FME. Yeah. If you do not, essentially saying if you do not do the step, essentially if you do not build this, say, I'm only need to have the classic route feature class. I would say as classic, I mean, classic in the sense in before roads and highway, what Esri, ArcGIS, delivers is just a route feature class, right? So you modify your feature class, however you do it, and then you can do dynamic segmentation with your events. So if you don't care about the internal, the thing for that, you actually can just build this directly. Just build so there's nothing wrong with it. It will meet, I would think, majority, if not 100% of your business rules. So, okay. You're saving quite a bit of grief in that sense. So we said, why do we need to build this then? The reason you build this so that you can modify your center lines, you can control your calibration points by modifying those tables, right? Then use the GP tool to generate the route feature class. If route feature class is what you do, but typically for most of the users, what they use, or most of the things you share with others, it's just a route feature class. So if you can skip step 4 and go directly to that, if it's all what you need, you can just use FME. In fact, that's actually the biggest lesson we learned. We start out building everything, and we're thinking, why do we have to build that, right? Because we're mimicking the manual process of that. The end result is for a route feature class for DynSeg. Yeah. So of course, how to do that? We're talking about using the measure setters, measure list of that, sequence that I'm mentioning about sequencing things. Yeah, being pretty critical if we are doing on our own. And yeah, it's certainly we need to do sequence just to ensure the centralized sequence file is in order, right? So we still need to do that, but we can still we could just skip on file if all you care is state route system. In fact, that's what we end up doing for West Virginia, making this process less heavy and process easier. So in a summary, no more manual state route building. It's a multi-step process. And later, after we built everything, realized, what's the point? We skipped center-line sequencing and center-line point. And then it's just become weekly refresh of state route. And I think people are pretty happy there. Yeah. And I think the building of this process in workspace isn't all that bad, right? And I think sequencing, you find your own logic and building it. Because me being a database guy, and oftentimes I just use SQL to handle that. And in the set kind of like computation, generate a table for sequencing them. That's kind of my way. But FME is so flexible that you have different ways to do it. Yeah. So that's basically it. This is totally doable. So Ryan, good luck, and you're on the right path using FME, tingling around it. So let's look at West Virginia, New York State, a project we just completed recently. And not final, but yeah, we decided to call it close. So they calculate and set state allows mile-point measures fields based upon the county mile measures. Okay. And so the requirement is building this lookup table, county LRM to state LRM state table. And so again, on the surface, you think they're actually supporting two LRM or LS networks, but in reality, they don't. They don't. So I thought they're pretty smart, knowing otherwise it's so unsustainable. They just create this lookup table because they don't have any. I think I confirm with Kevin. By the way, Kevin, the next session, Kevin's going to talk about this FME project. Yeah. And so in their kind of like the system, they don't have any events right off the bat using the state measure to do it. And there's some other uses of them but primarily they need to use the state accumulated mile measurements for other purposes. So for that, the project isn't all that bad. And so they and one of the challenges is really, you have one DOT route, you might have multiple county routes associated with it. They're sequenced already. So that makes my life so much easier. Yeah. And yes, border reset at 0, but they have 4 travel directions. Okay. Routes concatenated. They don't need to have concatenated Y. They do not need a physical statewide route feature class. So there's no need to concatenate. They only need measurements. So it's a measure translation table. So it wasn't too bad. Measure computation, yes, because you need to get a measure kind of the complications come with the different direction. Yeah, I think they were smart to maintain a single network. Yeah, and I think smart sometimes out of necessity. Just you don't have the resource doing this the way Esri, the Esri's way of maintaining two-route network. So here's one thing. So you have one route that you have the primary in this direction. Then if you are divided, you're using this divided. Then this is undivided, but using the same route, using the same segment in the other direction, same physical segment other direction, this way. Then I do not know why we have this. Maybe they stopped, later picked back up. I have no idea, but this is actually physical example. They do have an example over here. And here is the route scenario. So the cumulative route measure needs to come like this. This is the county order and this direction. So this is talking about this direction. And this one is on this direction. And so this example helped me to calibrate my logic to ensure I meet this criteria. Because this is just one of the, I think this is one of the more complicated scenarios I need to, figure out. It's more number crunching, not bad at all. Yeah, so that's kind of like, yeah, it's cool thing. So did it. Now we talk about Minnesota geometry replacement projects. For some of you who attended the one before the last Rosen Highway, One Spatial and Justic and myself represent Justic, and we did some sharing our approach. And for us, again, we don't have a product for that, unlike One Spatial. I'm just sharing some of the AI perspective, how we can use AI to make this work conflation more efficient, high accurate, it's just better, easier, to do. But one of the things I remember, one gentleman from Esri raised a question when I think right after SAFE, no, right after One Spatial's presentation, say how essentially how you maintain the metadata behind the network. The three fundamental tables, mostly hidden behind the scene, but kind of like control the puppet show, right? And so in fact, my presentation touches on that, not in a deep fashion because it's more general. So today I'm kind of expand that a little bit more on how I see in a scenario like Minnesota, they have route network built, maintained for many, many years. But route geometry will derive from a pretty outdated set of representation, geometry representation, and manually changing the center line is just not a verifiable option. But they do have the latest run, GPS runs, represent the entire state route system. So they're wondering if we could use the new geometry of the GPS run, which has no measurement information, but it want to inherit the measuring information to it. So kind of like just magic, replace geometry, keeping the same, I would say, the measure topology, if you will, okay? If you use the measurements, but also measurements need to be consistent at the intersecting point. Even though the intersecting point, physical locations, of course, need to be changed because the new route has different physical location, albeit minor in some places, in most places, but still the measurements over there need to be controlled just like before. The measurement beginning and at the intersection point will be the same, even though the geometry will be different. You know, I'm kind of repeating myself. I hope you got what my mental picture is. So my ARC presentation, and neither of us actually, well, my presentation touched upon it, but didn't do any expansion. But so here's what I presented over there, saying, hey, number 4 is the roads and highway network generation. When I say network, we're talking about complete network model, the 4 tables, including 3 puppet, the hidden tables behind it. So today I'm going to expand that a little bit. So this is what I see, how we'll do that. So from the LRSN, LRSN being the plus the configured routes, we have the 2 input. We're going to retire the center line and calibration points and sequence. We're talking about, again, in this case, we're talking about same network, okay? Was represented by the geometry in this old feature class, or feature class network combined with this. So then you insert the center line because you retire them. You need the center line. Center line is coming from the conflated routes or conflated, the sequence completed. So the center line is actually easier in this case. Is the center line because center line does not even have route ID. It just need to have unique ID, but unique ID you use to sequence in the center line sequence file. So that's kind of like insertion, using FME to do the insertion. Then you insert calibration points because calibration points here you need to derive from the combination of old one based upon the beginning point of matching, and the end point of the route, even though the point location has changed, and also make sure all the intersection could be between the state routes, but most likely you want to make sure the local streets crossing the state route in that location, the new location, capture this location and transfer the measure at the original kind of location over to that location. So you have a control. Then you can either use GP tool to generate it, or you can use the FME just to build your own route feature class. Then we're good. So this is kind of to the extent I envision, because this is it's not a project. It's just it's a research project, and this I do not see any problem doing this because we've been doing this in other projects already. I know FME is capable of doing this. I think that's actually to I did mention about in the section table. I did it in the section table for I think for instance for West Virginia and mostly for Arizona DOT building it. So just imagine you have sequence file, you have network, you can leverage them to build in the section table. In fact, yeah. And also building a spatial temporal network table, because in the section measurements, every time you have one segment change along a route of 100 miles, and you have to create a new time span to capture the beginning and before and after for during that time, right? So your intersection table is going to be kind of you need to make sure that you have the temporal consistencies built into it. And since the information is all captured in there, so it's would be just just number crunching, and it's no big deal. It might not be as efficient building it, but using, in my case, I'm using SQL. I also create one for using FME. I think SQL is more abstract, but it's faster for sure. Yeah. So with that, I'm leave this for Q&A, and any comments, and let me know if such more abstract talking and high level talking is anything of value to you. I know many of you are pretty hands-on, but this, because some of the complexity, I think just showing some of the things, it might not be as good to stay at a high level, thinking about the planning level of stuff. And FME, there's a variety of ways doing it. There's nothing special here. Just need to share how you do this and that. Okay, that's what I have. So I think this is the last slide. Yeah, truly, this is the last slide. So I'm gonna switch.
Awesome. Thank you, Bo. Again, does anyone have any questions or anything before we sign off?
Hey Matt, this is Abhijit. I guess I had a question more so related to any performance impact, when using FME for, modeling this complex LRS workflows compared to, native GIS tools like from Esri.
Yeah, good
Yeah,
question, Bo. Yeah, go ahead, Bo.
yeah. I was wondering, anyone else could share with your experience if you've been using FME for, let's say, DynSec, let's say doing other typical geocoding, what have you. Having none. And I think in some of the FME GIS events, at least in some of the scenarios, I think I don't quite remember. I think just a couple of years ago, I had a slide talk about performance differences. Okay. and FME easily two times faster. And SIG will be, oftentimes even faster. And I do have that. I do right off the bat. I do not, but I'll be experienced. And in fact, and our next speaker, the next session, is Kevin Hunt. He's going to talk about their FME in Pro migration. And we did something ancillary to their effort, but it was a rewrite of the original other methodology, and he was really pleased with the performance using FME. Yeah, but generally speaking, weak calculation is at least two times faster using FME. So there's reason to use FME, not only just for the flexibility of building it, also for performance reasons. And yeah, and the other thing is in November, this is something not official. I haven't even got his permission yet, but I thought it would be interesting. And as we are running out of just the transportation talks, and I thought dive deeper into the data types and attributes, parameter, variable, and traits. It's kind of subsection. I thought it was interesting to broaden up our view in FME. FME is getting more and more complicated, more flexible. That comes with, complication like that. Yeah. So, and we're always looking for people to share their knowledge. Okay, I see. Perhaps there are some more chats, messages. We may take one.
Yeah.
Goes that way. Okay, Aaron.
I
It is.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we've heard Kevin do a presentation here, but it'll be very interesting to see, what he has to say. I know he's been a longtime advocate of FME, and when I was first getting into the industry, he was a good resource when I met him out in GIST in, oh, I forget where. Might have been Oklahoma at the time, which was my first time, so like 3 years ago. And then Dave, I know all of us probably know Dave by now. Dave is so knowledgeable, and we're lucky to have him. So anytime Dave has anytime Dave is going to be talking, it's a great time to listen. So
Yeah, that's right.
that'll be those are two good sessions that will be coming up for us.
Yeah, and I know perhaps afterwards, early next year, we can have Ryan, who just left,
Yeah.
to do. Will he issues ring check anyway, so we'll take that. So great. Well, thank you. Well, any other comments and any questions? And if you are not over here, I know we have extended beyond the limits already. Send to us, and we'll make sure we have this talk available on YouTube channel soon.
Yeah, I think we're good, Bo.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate your stepping and help in moderating the session. I always appreciate that.
Yeah, no, thank you for presenting yet again. And as Bo said, yeah, feel free to reach out for any questions. I know you can find the group on LinkedIn. And yeah, looking forward to see everyone in September.